So you had this like, and still have this like ideal job of interviewing people for Forbes, and again, you
That's
get
not even my idea. I run 2 companies, so it's like, my side passion.
right. But how did you said you were working full time at some job, 50 to 60 hours a week, and then everybody needs to. This is the kind of the important lesson, which is that uh, you can't just quit your job and start your dream job.
No.
That's the problem. People think, "Oh, I hate this. I'm gonna go pursue my dreams instead." It doesn't work like that. You still had to do the 50 or 60 hours a week while you were constructing
Moonlighting.
your dream
Yeah.
job. And so what made you decide to put in that extra work, which nobody wants to do ever, and go for something new? And what were you going for? Like what were you hoping to achieve?
I think that's an amazing question.
Yes.
Yes, that is the question, right? You know, my parents are smart. They said, "Don't quit your day job until you're making enough money and can project enough revenue in a given year." And so that's why I stuck it out 3.5 years at EMC while writing the 12 blog posts, each week and starting the magazine, which was
What was the
quarterly and
magazine?
personal branding magazine. So everything in the first chapter of my life was around personal branding. And that's because in
Yeah,
high
your first
school and
book was on
college,
personal branding.
yeah, Me 2.0, right at the height of the Web 2.0 movement and the collapse of the US economy.
You
Um,
just say you wrote Me 2.0, 4 Steps to Building Your Future, and Promote Yourself, the New Rules for Career
Yeah,
Success.
each book helps people to get to the next phase of their career, and I have to be at that next phase in order to coach them through that phase. So
Right.
that's the long-term vision.
So you went from that 50, 60 hours a week, and it took you 3.5 years.
Yes, I was
What
so patient.
what was happening in those 3.5 years that were building? Like, how did you measure success? How did you measure that you were getting closer to your success? Like, how
E
did you define success?
Everything has come from the last thing I did. So from the blog, it taught me a lot about entrepreneurship. I built a community. People would comment in the blog, and I had the foresight to say, "Oh, wow, these people are commenting, which means they're invested, which means they might sponsor the magazine." So the magazine was my MBA because I was doing everything with the magazine. I was managing 100 contributors, columnists, editors. I was publishing it. I designed it. I did everything for the magazine. And by doing everything and really being hands-on, I learned so much about business and what it takes. So that was my MBA. And from there, that inspired and gave me a bigger platform to do the book. And then once the book started doing well, I got hired to speak. So I launched the speaking career. And I think I told you this before, for the speaking career, I was everything I ever do is I get paid nothing for in the beginning, right? So blogging, 0. The magazine, 0. Uh, my whole research career started nothing. The first few studies I didn't get paid for, and now we're up to 45 research studies. With next year, it'll be $1 million of funding I've raised,
Hmm.
with a capacity of over 90,000 people in over 20 countries. So that's like my favorite thing to do. That the interview started with 0, and I interviewed a professor, and then it just went from there. So I've learned over time you have to start with nothing. Like even Instagram, I had 4,000 followers several months ago, and I had the humility after building all of these things throughout all these platforms throughout my whole career to take a step back and say, "Hey, I'm going to build a whole Instagram profile by just commenting on people I like." I comment on your profile, Lewis Howe's profile, Jay Shetty's profile regularly, plus post 2 times a day, 7 days a week. So I'm fully committed with stories.
Two
So
times a
I'm
day on Instagram.
I'm committed.
How many
So
followers you got now?
I have about 30,000
Okay.
from 0 over from
Mm.
4,000. So um, I like starting with nothing. I like, my literary agent always says, when my research company was acquired, he emailed my business partners. He's like, "Congratulations, you just acquiring Dan's company and having Dan as one of your partners is like hiring 25 people."
That's
So I've
well.
I've created
I having known you this
I've
long.
created efficiencies through doing things so many different. I can do 3 research studies at the same time, whereas PwC and some of the biggest professional service firms in the world will take months with millions of dollars of funding and a huge research department to do 1 study.
Right, because that's always the case with, like, young, up and coming firms and agencies up against the big behemoths, is that you have less infrastructure, so you could charge less. Maybe the biggest companies in the world won't hire you because you're not, PwC, but you build up and then eventually get acquired. I think
Uh,
that's like a standard model.
yeah, I mean, to me,
That
like
that's a that's
when
actually a very standard model to make your first million,
Yeah,
I would say.
when Oracle says, "Hey, Dan, we're gonna work with you," they're saying no to a lot of companies.
Right, and if you get basically 10 oracles, you're gonna get acquired by a bigger company who wants to have Oracle on their client list.
Yeah.
But I'll get to that in a second. I'm still interested in how you kind of moved, from one thing to the other. So you started doing these interviews for Forbes. You leveraged the interview with Colin Powell to start writing for the print magazine for Forbes. Each time you're leveraging to the next thing.
But before Forbes, I was writing for business. I was the youngest columnist at BusinessWeek, and then I was doing it on my own blog, personalbrandingblog.com.
So you
So
use
I've always been doing the
you
interviews. It's
use
just from the Forbes because that's the last like 800 interviews I did for
well, and also
Forbes.
that's where you wrote about me. So that's
Yeah,
where.
multiple times.
So
And then I do goals too. So I don't do 10-year goals anymore, but I do annual goals. And it's all like, I need to do 7 research studies and it's a checklist. That's what it looks like. So it's 3-tier. It's what do I need to do today and this week? And then what do I need to do this year? And then what I do is I break it up into 5 personal and 5 professional. So it could be visit 2 countries, and then I check off Costa Rica this year was the big country I visited, and then Manchester I'm visiting in November, and so those are my 2 international trips. And then for research studies, it'll be 6, 7, 8 research
but
studies, and then every time I get funded and fully execute one of those studies, I mark a check.
but on a on a
And then
daily
those are
basis though.
daily. Those are daily too. So like that is what I have to accomplish in a year, and then I backtrack and I say, okay, in order to do that one study, I have to get a sponsor. I have to, come up with the theme and the questions. Those need to be approved. Then we need to field the study. Then I need to analyze the data. And then I conduct a promotional campaign based on the data to get media attention to
So
serve the client.
so
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 it's that whole process. And I break up that process on a weekly basis that enables me to check it off on my goals sheet eventually.
so so uh in terms of prioritizing, goals change. Like as you every day you learn more. And so when you learn enough, you might say, this goal I had 2 months ago, I've learned so much in the past 2 months. I don't really want this as a goal anymore. So goals have a tendency to change. But on a daily basis, you kind of, when you wake up, you know what you're going to be doing for the day. You prioritize tasks and you make sure the most important one is from 10 a.m. to 12 or whatever. So, like for me, sometimes it's hard though. Like I have podcast, an angel investor. I do stand-up comedy right here. I help run a pretty significant business. I have relationships. I'm a parent. It's hard to prioritize. Everything seems equally important. Like how would I prioritize?
I think it's probably the illusion that it's all important. It's not about the fact that you have many things, it's about what you're doing when. And so if, parenting requires a lot of effort and emotional energy, then maybe that happens in the night, maybe in the evening. So you have to take a good look at everything you're doing. And like I said in the book, it's like work life integration. Like, how do you integrate everything you want to do professionally and personally throughout the day? And so many people use their calendar. Everyone says, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. Why not start putting personal things on the calendar? That's what I
Right.
do. So
So so
I'm able to like meet friends for coffee and then go back and do a project and maybe write. And so like I integrate it, but my calendar reflects my integration.
so I do some version of that, which is probably the same as you do, which is I know because I know that same thing from Dan Ariely's been on this podcast. I'm sure you've interviewed him. Uh, I make sure so writing is always the most creative thing, not necessarily the most important, but the most creative thing I have to do. So I make sure before 11 a.m. it's only focused on writing. There's almost unless like a podcast guest can only make it at 9 a.m., which is rare. There's nothing before 11 a.m. And then we usually do podcast guests around now, which is roughly somewhere between noon and 3 or whatever. And and then business stuff actually is easier. Doesn't require as much business. Not that business is trivial, but it doesn't require the same kind of creative mental effort. Like it's a matter of talking to people and seeing what people's needs are and so on. So I usually reserve that for later in the day when my the real creative side of my brain is probably more tired.
Yeah.
And
No,
so
totally. I mean, writing for sure in the first few hours of the day, I think is so important, especially because I think you need to set yourself up for success the night before too. So the night before, I'm like, okay, this is what I need to accomplish the next day. And then when I wake up, I don't have to think about what I need to accomplish. It's already written out for me. But I think writing for sure is something that you should do early in the morning
So it's almost like you need to put into
because
buckets, like
you need a fresh eyes, fresh day and morning to inspire you and be like, oh, this is a new idea I just had. I can riff on this.
so it's almost like you need to prioritize according to buckets. Like here are the creative activities that are important to me. Here are the business activities that are important to me. Here are the relationship activities that are important to me. And there's different times of the day that are ideal for
Yeah.
each one
And the
for you.
podcast for you it's conversational. You're just
Yeah,
being you. This is whether you think it's hard or easy, it feels natural to you. It's not like you have to sit down in a private space and like really think about, okay, how do I want this article to come off? This is just a conversation.
right.
We could be anywhere right now.
Hey, thanks for listening to the James Altucher Show on YouTube today. I have a really special brand new episode coming out next week, but you can watch it early. Just click on the link right here or subscribe to the channel when you click on my face. Oh, one second. Don't forget to click the bell. I'll see you next time.